How's it going? All right.
Good morning.
Juliet, how are you?
Actually, it feels like such an opportunity now to get some of these stories told. Good morning, Mart, or good lunchtime, Mart. How are you?
Good lunchtime, Juliet. I'm very stoked to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Great. So this is Mart from Rapanui, one of our fabulous customers. Very generously comes and talks to our staff about all the brilliant things he does. What came first? Was it the T-shirt or the purpose? Or did they both come together?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's sort of, I guess we like a lot of young people at the time, we wanted to do something about all these issues around sustainability and climate and plastics. So, but I think more than anything, it's really the business just an expression of like our values. Like we quite want to be, contributing to something positive. And I think we just found that starting a brand was a good way to kind of, a good fun way to kind of share the things that we're passionate about with other people too.
And why fashion then? Why T-shirts? What was the basis of that then?
Well, I think we have like a serious kind of view about this, like which is around like climate change and renewable energy. But I don't think you can really persuade people. I think that like it's not a lot of like people don't care about this stuff. I don't think, right? It's just a lot of people don't really know about it, and those that do find it quite challenging to know what they can do about it themselves, because these issues are like global and often very serious and can be quite worrying. Yeah. And so we just wanted to do something. Rather than just kind of like moan about it, we wanted to, I mean, products are real. They're like something you can make, and something in making stuff, you can change how they're made. And also everybody relates to clothes. Yeah. Most people wear them every day. And I guess it just feels like something that's it's fun, it's accessible, and it's a way to turn something that's quite serious. You can both do something about it from a manufacturing side, but you can also it can start conversations, and I guess that's why we ended up doing what we do.
And so tell me a little bit about the history. So obviously the concept of the T-shirt. How did you actually set it up in the first place? Where did that come from? Because that's always a challenge for, I think, anybody who's young, who's kind of going, it's quite daunting, isn't it? I don't know, maybe you weren't daunted.
I think we're just like really naive. and yeah, so we were like in a shed in my mum and dad's garden. Yeah. And me and my brother, Rob, he's really good at like business stuff. And we were just like, I wonder if we could it sort of seemed cool. What we're trying to do is really simple. Like in my mind, it's like, wonder if we can make T-shirts that are made from natural materials, not plastic, and have a business that's powered by renewable energy instead of fossil fuels, and then make stuff the right way. And also, we didn't call it a circular economy at the time, but like it sort of seems crazy that when someone's done with it, they kind of just throw it in the bin, and then as a business, you have to go and start all over. Whereas if they just sent it back, we could just recycle it. So it seems so simple. So we're just like, yeah, sure, we could do that. And we're on the Isle of Wight, and we don't really have like, any access to like the industry or anything. And we were just, I was like 19, so we didn't really know what we were doing. And we just got started. We had like a laptop and 200 quid and that's I guess the thing about being alive in the world today. Everyone talks about all the problems with the world, but also, young people have the internet, so they can reach the world from a shed. And I guess we just were sort of didn't have access to anyone who told us how stupid an idea it was. And then if you keep going for 10 years, you can kind of, this is where you get, I suppose.
And so essentially what you're saying is that you were the fashion industry of the Isle of Wight.
Of Lake Isle of Wight. Yeah, we were easily the biggest brand in the whole garden. From day one.
And it sounds like you took all your values and bundled them up and sort of set up the business, and it really grew from there. Have you ever had a time when those values have been tested by decisions you've had to make kind of on the pathway over the years.
Definitely. I mean that is the thing that is crazy that no one ever talks about, and that you're tested every day, because one of the things we realized was when we tried to do the right thing, use organic materials, when we tried to buy in, at the time, like renewables, were just started, it was a bit of a different industry. Wasn't quite as advanced as it is now. And then when we tried to kind of recover stuff, everything got more expensive.
Yeah.
And that people don't talk about that a lot. And I think that's crazy. Like, isn't it crazy how the economy punishes a business for doing the right thing, and it rewards you for doing the wrong thing? So that's a major reason why a lot of people who talk about, behavior change and education, it's kind of like going into a school and saying to kids, you guys need to change your behavior and educate yourself, and now everybody stand on the roof. But like, if gravity forces their feet on the floor, there's only so much, they can try and jump a bit, but they're going to end up staying where they are. So what we had to do, and we didn't realize it, but because we didn't have much money, we had to be quite creative about the resources that we did have. So that 200 quid really needed to go places and stay valuable. So that's quite a good model, actually, for startups to be quite resource constrained if the outcome is a business that is one which has to keep resources or maximize resources and minimize waste. And what we found was we had to use modern technologies to automate parts of our business, and then those technologies created massive efficiencies that saved loads of money. And then it was those efficiencies that allowed us to pay to do the things that we wanted to do. It made it more efficient, so we could afford better materials, we could afford renewables, and we could afford to recover our products back and remake them.
Interesting. I love that. That's great. So basically, by being really resource constrained, you became a company that really cared about your resources, and then you allowed yourself to invest and do more. That's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, there's kind of like £0 startups. Like, actually, I'm pro. It's not the easiest thing, but it definitely forces you to come up with new ways of operating.
Yeah, and coming back to the funding of the business, was that it? Was it literally the 200 quid? You never got any other funding from anywhere else?
Yeah, I mean, like to start with, for the first 5 years, from 3, 4, 5 years or so. Mm-hmm. And as we've got bigger, obviously, like the traditional, you do end up having stuff like, so we bought a supermarket, and we turned it into a factory. You
bought a supermarket?
Yeah, we bought a co-op. It was really funny. We went into a co-op.
That.
Yeah, we went into a co-op like, is this for sale? Like, what, like the sandwiches? Like, no, the whole thing. And then, and like, obviously, like borrowing and stuff like that comes into play.
So you didn't buy the supermarket for 200 quid then?
No, it's a little bit more than that, actually. But yeah, like I mean, what we were doing at the time was we wrote code to, like, so the kind of digital infrastructure of our business cost nothing because it was code. And we just taught ourselves to code on Google, actually, just Google and YouTube and whatnot. And so we from the start built kind of like a digital infrastructure behind the business that was essentially costless because it's just code.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. And what all that code does, what we were doing at the time is when we get a sale, we'd kind of make it in the seconds after, because we'd sort of like, it would mean we didn't have to, because we couldn't afford stock. We were like, well, we have to have none. So then we developed a way to kind of like print products in real time in the seconds after they're ordered. So what's cool about that is that because there's no waste, like you only make what people need when they need it.
Yeah.
Your business is more efficient. There's no waste, so you can be more.
You don't need so much cash.
Yeah, you don't need as much cash, and then the cash that you do make isn't wasted. So then that's one of those efficiencies that I'm talking about that then pays for us to say, well, because there's no waste, we got a little bit more money. We can. It's okay for us to do this kind of organic and stuff and everything. And that's kind of how we make it work. And then more recently, obviously, we've been sharing that technology with other businesses to kind of scale it. But it was fundamentally from the start the lack of resources forced us to develop a fundamentally different way of operating, and it just so happens that actually perhaps one of the most reassuring parts about that is that modern tech like code and stuff is relevant to sustainability, not like worse, and also that there you can kind of like redesign the way that businesses work. Like the actual model is up for grabs too, is on the table in this whole debate.
No, it's really interesting because actually, if I remember right at the beginning of Good Energy, we got forced into the same thing really, because nobody would contract with us because we were too small and we were a startup. So we had to buy power from lots of small independent generators, and that's how we built our business. Actually, is enabling this decentralized model. So I love it because it's very similar. That kind of resource constraint, you said, we didn't have cash, we couldn't buy lots of things, and so we had to be really careful about it. I love it. Just coming back to the overall clothing industry. Obviously, you are the clothing industry of the Isle of Wight, but
the whole supermarket, the whole sort of supermarket, we're the biggest brand in this whole supermarket right now.
The wider clothing industry. I mean, do you get involved with them much? And I mean, you must see their environmental problems. I mean, it's well known that the fashion industry is a kind of throwaway industry. Do you get involved in them? Do you go and try and change them? And if you were going to change anything, what would you change?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, not really. I mean, I think we're sort of a little bit of a nuisance, to be honest with you, because we're the reality is, like, say, less than 1% of clothing's recycled. I think 3 out of 5 T-shirts bought today will be thrown in the bin within a year.
Wow.
And at a systemic level, like, there's like a dump truck a second of textiles waste that goes into landfill or incineration. So every second there's a lorry of clothes burned or buried, every second, and again and again and again. So it's like to have what we've done is we've looked at this systemically, looked at the product life cycle as a connected system, and just looked for solutions all over the place, and designed products that are designed to come back and be remade. So instead of making waste, we make new clothes from it. And now what we're doing is sharing that with other small startups and charities that are not traditionally involved in the clothing industry, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So quite a lot of the participation that we've had from other brands has been new starts. And what we did with Teemill, like our platform, we took all of the tech in Rapper, and we kind of just said, well, like, okay, so we've built this circular economy, so a T-shirt comes back and is remade again, but if we're serious about the solution, it needs to be at least as big as the problem, otherwise it won't work.
Yeah.
So we need either Rapanui is going to be the biggest brand in the entire world, and everybody is going to wear everything from Rapper, which is not realistic. Or we need to kind of share it, and so we just put it on the cloud and let other people start their own brands. And so all of those people generally tend to be in a similar place that we were when we started, quite small, quite values-based businesses, but without the traditional access to capital or debt or whatever to build their own infrastructures. Actually, there's a lot of barriers to entry to the fashion industry that prevent it being disruptive in the first place. So what Teemill does, let people do what took us like 10 years in 10 seconds or whatever. They can do it on their phone. And so we don't really tend to interact with the industry as a whole. We're sort of, I don't want to sound like too much of a sort of like too keen, but we're just sort of thinking maybe it might be better just to start again and replace it with by like enabling the next generation of brands to start on a circular model from, you know what I mean, instead of sort of trying to sort of go out there and meet people in the middle, because we made a choice at the start, which is a lucky one really, to only use natural materials. Like most clothes are made out of plastic. More than 2/3 of all clothing is plastic.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. And the reason that it's plastic is because it's kind of like easier to make. It's stronger. You can rip it through the spinning machines faster, and it makes tougher, like higher throughput. And in a linear economy, you just need to maximize throughput, right? But in a circular economy, it doesn't really matter because it's coming back anyway. So let's all just kind of chill down a little bit.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we had to do was a load of work on making the print and the labels and so on compatible with our recovery process.
When you're in the shed and you've just received the first T-shirt back, and you're going, how long did it take before you got to chop-upable?
10 years.
Okay, so it was a real challenge you set yourselves then.
Yeah, actually maybe like 8 years, but like it was hard. Like it's hard because the way it works is that everybody is in their own little bubble. So even within a business, it kind of holds back like in the traditional clothing business that we have talked to, like you have like a CEO who just wants to maximize, his job is to maximize shareholder returns. And then you have like a buyer who's got to get with the trends, like, oh, sequins are amazing. Yeah. And then the sustainability person is kind of added on like, oh, by the way, once we've done all this, can you just clean it all up? And what we had at the start, which was lucky, is our main reason for doing this actually was just because we wanted to see if we could do it.
Yeah.
And so we didn't have all of those conflicts. We had one goal, which was to make it circular. I've got some here. Hang on.
Excellent.
This is really fun.
Wow. Yeah, I can.
This is old Rapanui t-shirts or Teemill t-shirts these days. And this is the yarn.
Yeah.
So it's like, but it's when you chop it up and make it again, it's very weak. See?
Yeah.
So you have to have there's clever engineering related stuff like, to make it back into a t-shirt that's as good as new again. I think one of the most rewarding parts of doing this is where we see, because through Teemill we see other people who have got their own dreams, and then they use the technology and they make their own thing, and actually we quite like the idea that maybe those brands are going to be cooler and better than Rapper.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to see them like especially young people who are really passionate about these things, kind of doing something about it via the internet and not just being consumers that are kind of concerned, but actually participating by creating their own businesses too. And that's really exciting because it gives you a lot of hope that change will come from rather than waiting for big businesses to change. It might just come from people.
A network of smaller businesses.
You got it.
But there is this concern that if we start to refocus on a green economy, do we think the green economy can actually respond? I mean, if you suddenly got inundated with people wanting to set up their own businesses and do a lot more sustainable clothing, could you guys respond to that?
Well, our business grows probably doubles in size each year.
Right. Wow. Okay. So that's pretty exponential then, isn't it? If I remember, doubling.
Yeah. Yeah, dusting off the old maths.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day, like that's how the economy works, right? Like if there's a demand, we will supply. And if I think what matters is the right kind of demand. And this whole issue is a failure of demand and supply to start with, in the sense that pollution and the impact on the environment is not costed in. So the government could solve that with legislation by costing in pollution, and then things would change really, really quickly because it'd be cheaper to do things the right way instead of wrong. But what I would say is that the good thing about the circular business model is that I really want to stress this, is it is values driven. That's how we got here, but it will sustain itself because it is more efficient and therefore better for business. Like of all clothing production, something like 40% roughly is not utilized. So, people make en masse and then loads of it is just never sold and thrown in the bin.
Yeah.
So if you said to a major clothing producer, like imagine if it was like Acme Clothing, who makes all of the t-shirts in the world, like, 40% of everything you make goes in the bin. Would you like to, if you used a different model where you only made what people need when they need it, you could save 40% or make more money.
Yeah.
And so I think what would help would be to make the connection between sustainability and finance and say, and it's really easy, in my opinion. That's what's so frustrating about it. If you imagine finance coming from the markets and you had a load of money for like your kids' future or whatnot, where would you put it? In the fund that's completely unsustainable, or a cliff edge that's never going to work long term, or the one that is designed to be sustainable and work forever? It's a no-brainer. You'd put your money in sustainability. So I think this is good for business, good for the environment, and good for the people who work in these businesses. We just need to kind of make the connection and get inspired by some examples by doing stuff like what you're doing, I guess.
Thank you.
Oh, no worries. Thanks very much for the invite. Really appreciate it, Sound. Nice one. Cheers.